So the project has gone far. I just stopped updating. I just stopped making updates on the YouTube channel, but it's not that I quit or stopped making updates on the, the project. So like actually I've done a lot. Like so far I've written like 800 lines of code, like 800 lines of code like across all these components. Yeah, like a lot has gone. I just maybe I could say I was too lazy to make updates. But let me walk you through how far I've progressed now, like where the project has reached. So currently, uh, just to like this now. Currently, this is what the table looks like. You have a student in a certain grade in a certain class, and yeah, yeah, he has a homework, a quiz, or a classwork. You can add rows if you like. If you like, let's say we add 4 rows, and you can add rows either by clicking this insert button or by clicking enter button. Either works. Um, Also for leaving, you can either click the cancel button or click this black area or click the escape button. Either way, any of those methods work. So yeah, this is then these are the new rows that are added, like here I could type a new student. I could write some students here, give them some values, but I'll give them later. The values I'll give them later. So I could just save this, and when I save it and refresh it, the data just comes back as normal. And I can even insert data, like here, either by clicking this button or just directly inserting the number. And when I reload it, it doesn't come out because I haven't like finished this feature of writing in the cells yet, but I will soon. So like I could change this to 9. Yeah, I haven't finished that feature yet. So I will just make this feature of cells actually changing and saving the data later. For now I was just focusing on adding rows and columns and making sure they're synced with the database, which is Supabase. Then you can also switch classes. This is class 10A. We're currently in class 10A. Now class 10B, this is class 10B. You can switch between classes, and this class 10B, you can add rows. Let's say I add 7. Now you have 8 rows. And let's say I write a student here, and I write another student here. Yeah, like these two students. Now if I click save and then refresh. I start in 10A by default. I'll fix that later. But for now, you just have to switch to 10B and the students are still there. And you can even add rows in between. That works still. It works adding rows in between. Still, you could save, refresh, switch to 10B. It works like in both classes. This works in both classes. Not only can you just add classes, you can not only can you add rows, you can also remove them. This model is pretty much similar to this one. The only difference is that this just performs deletion of rows. You can insert it and students are just deleted straight away. Yeah, even that is saved, by the way. The deletion also works properly. And yeah, that's pretty much all for adding and removing rows. You can also add columns. You can click here you can type what the column is, like say small homework, for example. That's small homework. You should determine what type of thing it is, what type of column it is. Is it student ID? Is it student ID meaning something like hashtag 00001, hashtag 989, these codes that they give students, especially during times of national exams. You could write the gender, which is just simply text, and homework, classwork, and everything above that is just numbers. Yeah, these are number fields. So I should select homework for now. The maximum score should be something like 10. Let's make it 15. And when I insert the small homework, now when I try to add the numbers, I cannot add more than 15 and I cannot write more than 0. These ones do not have a maximum score yet, which I am going to fix, but the columns that you add immediately have a maximum score if you specify them. And also you can see that if I add here, this one adds also, I'll fix that. It's not, the features is not complete yet, I'll fix that. And also make sure that when I add a new column, it actually appears like where I added it. If I added it here, the column is supposed to appear in between homework and classwork. I'll adjust those differences for now. Yeah, after adding, besides adding rows and columns, you could also add uh, new classes. You could add new classes. Now let's say I add a class 9 and the section is B, and the year, academic year, is the current academic year by default, but you could just switch it maybe to the future if you want to go 1 year ahead. If it's a previous year, you can just if it's a previous year, you just type it out. Which one is it? Is it like this old? You could type it out. It works either way. Yeah, you could type it out. If it's a previous year, you can add it right. You can't go more ahead by to the future by more than 1 year. I just won't allow you. But by default, the current year is selected. And the term, you could select which quarter it is. And what I would do here is insert 9B. The subject shall be English. In the quarter, the fourth quarter. And I shall insert now. Something went wrong. Yeah, it added it. It took time, but in the end it did add. So this is the new class. By default, these two students load. By default, when you create a new class, I automatically create 2 students with names and just filler data. But I'll make them empty. I'll soon make them empty. Like maybe after I kind of finish making all features functional, I will make sure that when you add a new class, you add 2 empty rows, not ones that are pre-filled. That this one also works perfectly. Even if you like, just let's click save and reload the page, things work still as usual. Nothing changed. And yeah, that's pretty much how far I've gone so far. In Supabase, I actually use 4 tables in Supabase. One called students table. What it does is that it basically tracks the student. It gives the student an identity in the database. So the student has a class ID, meaning, their class has an ID of itself. So like students of the same class have the same class ID. The student also has an ID and a temp client ID. This ID is a true UUID, the one provided by Supabase. This temp client ID is just a temporary client ID that we use just if we want to use the app offline, or in the case the database does not work and we cannot get the ID, or if this entire student if we are trying to identify this student or use the data of this student while while we're trying to use the data of this student before the UID has been generated. It takes some time to auto-generate the ID by Supabase, but this one we created in React. This one is created in React. This client ID is created immediately in React. The UID, we have to take it from Supabase, which we do later. I think it's around here. That's yeah, we upload this part. Yeah, like we upset the rows we created in React. We create the rows in React, then upset it to Supabase and use temp client ID as a temporary ID for the row. And after that, you just use the ID normally. Then now you select the ID and you use it normally. So that's basically all for students row. Then we have the columns table. It basically stores the metadata of the column. Basically this. It basically stores the metadata of the columns, nothing really special. So like we have columns, row numbers, class, small, homework, etc. And it also has class IDs because certain columns are created in certain class. Like if you create a column in a certain class, that column exists only in that class. That's why we have a class ID over here. Because it says student's name, this specific column belongs to this specific class. This specific column called student's name belongs to this specific class. So each class has each class has its own column structure. That's why you can see like multiple students' names that differ basically only in the IDs, like the class ID, the temp client ID, and the UUID. That's pretty much the class one. Later I will add a formula such that if the column is a column that its value is defined by other columns, like a mid-exam, let's say total. A total is basically the summation of all the marks you've got so far in every other column, right? So that it doesn't have its own independent value. It is computed from other columns. That's why you use the formula here. The maximum score is the maximum score. So far, we've set only a maximum score for the small homework that we've created. Everything else by default doesn't have a maximum score, and I'm going to fix that in the future. This is editable thing. It just specifies can you edit that row, that column? Can you like click on it and edit it or not? So now, for example, row numbers you cannot edit them. Pretty much everything else you can edit. There will be a feature that I will add in the future where you can manually determine if a certain column is editable or not. You'll determine by yourself, but by default, row numbers are not editable. Everything else is editable. This column's not functional yet. Actually, it doesn't do anything yet, but I'll make sure it works later. And the grades part. This is where the actual students' grade are stored. What this does is basically a grade, which is written here in numeric value. A grade is basically the value found in a cell that, a value found in the cell is what numeric value is. It's like a value found in a cell. But what is a cell? A cell is an intersection of a row and column. There's a row and a column, and an intersection of the two provides you with a cell. So this is basically what's happening. So we have a student, like here on this part. You have a student ID, and a column ID. The student ID is the ID of the row to which the value of the value of this cell, no, the cell of this value belong to. Let me repeat that again. The student ID is the ID, the UUID of the row whose cell has this value. And the column ID is the ID of the column whose cell contains this value. Now, I might have made it a little bit more complicated than I should. Let me show you an example. So student ID has D1AB6. Let's look here. Is there a student with DUIB6? D1AB6, this student. Okay, we have this student who is Yasra Worku in this class, with this ID. So now D1AB, now let's go back to the grade column. 7 has, in the column ID, it has AB2FF, AB2FF. AB2FF, where's AB2FF? here, this column, it is quizzes column on Yapsara's row. It is the quizzes column of Yapsara's row. Where was that? Yeah, the quizzes column of Yapsara's rows. So this basically means it is Yapsara's row but quizzes column. So this is it. It is this part. This is the data. So basically, each of these data is represented as an intersection of the ID of a row and the ID of the column. So this 8, the value in the homework, is represented as as like a coordinate system, an XY coordinate, where like the X is the value of the UID of the row in which the cell is found, and the Y is the UID of the homework in which the cell is found. Basically, this is how I represent a value, how I refer to a value in Supabase using this grades table. That's how I do it. It's basically an intersection of every single thing. I know this provides a lot of records, but this, I think, the best way I figured out. I think this is the best way to do it so far. And the classes, what's the classes table? Class table just stores identity of classes. This one has the least, rows, the least records. But the class is basically just the class grade, which is a number, class section A, B, C, D, E. The subject, you have to specify the subject, the teacher ID, the teacher has an ID. Yes, the teacher has an ID. The teacher also has ID. The teacher to whose this column belongs to also has an ID. It does nothing so far, but we'll fix that later. The academic year, in which the academic year, like a class of 1 year is not the same as a class of another year, right? So that's why I needed to specify the academic year. Now semester is it the fourth quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter? I just specified it. This is basically the class this is basically the table that takes care of these classes over here. This one is pretty much how far I've gone with the project. Code-wise, pretty much just wrote a bunch of code, to be honest. 800 lines of code. May I skim over it? Yeah, like I've created a lot of things so far, I used use effects for initialization of data. What I mean by that is when you first load the website, there's no data in your computer, of course, so you have to request data from the database, which means you kind of have to send all these network requests, you have to send all of these requests to the database in order to get a response which contains all the values you want. Yeah, that's pretty much it for initialization of data. And I've created a function for syncing specifically the rows of the students. And I've also created a function for syncing only, only the columns, syncing only new columns, newly added columns. I've also made a function for that. I also added a function for syncing data. Like those cells, the values of the cells. I also made one for that. And I also made a function for deleting students from Supabase. I also made a function for syncing classes to Supabase. I also made a lot of functions so far. Um, yeah, so that's basically been a month, and so far I've coded like 800 lines of code. I learned a lot, by the way, like a lot, because during this journey, there's a lot of things that I was just confused and not understand how to do, try to figure out myself. And in the end, I did. I would say that I took a lot of help from AI, not in the sense that AI coded for me, but in the sense that when I just could not figure out what to do, like, for example, just this exact thing over here. When I try to, create to create something like this using my knowledge that I had at the time, the knowledge I had at the time, I would use map. I would use map, which is slow and is buggy for ordering the cells over here. It's not the best way to do it. And when I ask how can I optimize this to an AI, which is basically Gemini over here, what it tells me something. I look at what it told me, I analyze it, try to understand it, study it, and use it next time. Use it for next time for myself. That's pretty much it. Yeah, a lot of code to be honest. Most of it is just skipping lines and spaces. It's not really pure 800 lines of code. Well, with the components over here, yes, it is around 800, pretty much like 800, 800 lines of code. But yeah, like a lot of things are code over here. We have, you have the add remove rows button. So this is the button that says add rows or remove rows. And the model, like when you click those buttons, there's a model that pops up on your face. This is what it is. And in adding rows in between, this is the button for it. And the logic for it, add rows in between model. Where is that add rows in between model? Not sure where I put it, but yeah, there's an add rows in between model, which I kindly not remember where I put it. I think I use the same add remove rows model for adding rows in between. And yeah, also for adding columns in between. For that, I've also like added column in between button, just a button of add column in between. And we also have the modal, which is pretty much this. We have the header, which currently contains nothing but the save button, which later I'll add more features. There is no removing between button no, so far. There's no grading logic so far. This is where I'll write the formulas and stuff. The grade table is the table itself, that dynamic table itself. It is the component that has the second most amount of code after the app, to the app.js. This one has the most code. This grade table has the second most code. And we have the class switcher, the one that has, the classes and actually switch the classes. This is basically the class switcher. Then we have the class info model, what pops up in your screen after you click, add the add button. That's pretty much all that has been done on the project so far. I know 2 comments, and seems like this much progress might be too little for a month of work, but I have exams to worry about. Not every day can be spent coding. Sometimes life gets in the way. But at least I've remained consistent, I'd say. There were days where I just completely did not code because maybe there's a classwork in school, or maybe mid exams upcoming, or a final exams close. I mean, because of those reasons, a lot of times I just did not code some days, but most days I was consistent. That's why I've been able to go this far. And I really appreciate like learning React to do this. React is so much better for the app I'm building. It's like using just vanilla JavaScript and vanilla HTML. That just was not going to work at all. Like, not at all. So React was much better. Is much better. I'm actually glad I learned React. And later I might learn Next.js. I mean Node.js, not yeah, Next.js, and maybe even Node.js, because I'm gonna actually have to manipulate the backend at some point. And yeah, I'll keep on making more progress. It's pretty much all the update I have to make so far. I'll try to also be like consistent with the updates that I'm making. I also try to be consistent with updates I'm making, and yeah, that's pretty much for now.